When I was a kid, I used to go onto the roof of my house and I would stand on the ledge and I would look over and I would think to myself, why am I not jumping off? That might sound weird. It's not that I was experiencing suicidal ideation, but I was genuinely curious about what was motivating my behavior and my choices. I was scared that if I jumped off, obviously I could get hurt. I could die, my parents would get upset with me. These were all factors that were playing a role in why I was deciding not to jump off. That sparked this idea that I've been fascinated with my whole life about whether or not we have free will. I've come to the belief that there's no such thing as true free will, and that this idea can actually be helpful in a therapeutic context. So, for some historical context, Sigmund Freud and the psychoanalyst attribute much of what we do to the unconscious and to defense mechanism. For example, there's a defense mechanism called reaction formation. To keep ourselves safe, we develop the opposite reaction and experience that what we truly feel. Lots of people with who are very kind, right? They're really kind and nice people. They want to see the best in others, and they walk around somewhat ironically with a bunch of anxiety. And they often feel guilt about this. They will say things like, I didn't have a traumatic childhood. My relationship with my parents is great. I was so privileged and I still walk around with all this anxiety. What's going on? We will sometimes find that maybe they're looking through their relationships in history with rose-colored glasses. Their parents could be controlling and cruel, and they wouldn't necessarily let them experience emotions such as anger. What the child does is they repress it, they bury it, and then they develop a personality that's the opposite of what they really feel. So, in the process of psychodynamic psychotherapy, gradually uncovering the truth, so to speak, of what the clients are really experiencing. And this heavily implies that there's no free will. What might you be blind to that is directly, though unconsciously, driving how you feel and behave and experience yourself? So another form of therapy is called existential psychotherapy. And one of the big contributors to this field was a psychologist named Viktor Frankl. He wrote and developed his form of therapy in a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which he describes his experiences as a Holocaust prisoner during World War II. The crux of his position is that we always have freedom. Our freedom lies in our ability to choose what's meaningful to us and to live by those values. I think that's great. And it also doesn't really get to the heart of whether or not there really is true free will. Another form of therapy, which is very, you probably have heard of this, is CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. The process is essentially changing our thoughts and behaviors. So let's say, for example, you're at a dinner party and you make a joke and nobody laughs. You just experience this jolt of just shame and embarrassment, and you have this thought like, I am just such a silly, dumb person. In an extreme case, you avoid social situations because you're just so afraid that you're going to make a joke again or that people are going to judge you. And so CBT is we're actually reframing our thoughts to be more compassionate and based in reality. Making jokes that don't land is a human universal, right? We all make mistakes. We all sometimes slip in public, and it doesn't define us as a person. What we're doing is we're shifting, we're reframing our mentality, our sense of self, and this can have great impact on our emotional experience. We realize how much our automatic thoughts, such as saying, I'm a silly, dumb person, really shapes how we walk around and feel in the world. The implication in CBT is that we have freedom still, right? Like we make choices. We choose to have different thoughts. We choose to behave differently. And that's really great too. And it really works. And it still isn't technically free. So, on a neurobiological level, we know that our behaviors and experiences are driven by a chain of events that are happening in our bodies. We know from experiments that our conscious experience occurs around a few hundred milliseconds after this chain of events begins. And so it's kind of similar to when you turn on the light. It seems like it's happening instantaneously. You're actually experiencing it after the stimuli has occurred. We're experiencing reality and our perception a little bit after the actual stimuli. This really implies that even the choices we make are really important decisions, like who are we going to get married to, or are we going to switch career paths, this has all technically already been decided in some sense by the biophysical events that are happening in our brain and bodies. Think about all the other factors that play a role in how you experience yourself and the choices you make from a cultural level, right? What culture do you come from? How does religion and politics play a role in your choices about who to associate with and who to date? What about your birth order? We've got the so-called middle child syndrome, and the oldest child has a certain burden of responsibility. All these factors can play a huge role in how you experience the world. And they're all factors that have nothing to do with what you chose. So that's really important to understand and to have insight about. And I bring that into the therapy process. For the ethical implications of this, if we know that there's no such thing as true free will, that if we were to go back in time, we wouldn't have done otherwise because we couldn't have because of the deterministic factors, this really means that we're not at fault for either the good or the bad things. A lot of people will hold a lot of shame or guilt or depression about their past or who they are because they're attributing fault to themselves. Some people will say, well, aren't we responsible? And I think that's true. We are responsible. And so in my practice, I like to distinguish between fault and responsibility. Fault is just a judgment. It just says that what you did was bad and there's a finality to it it's just the foundation for shame, right? It's a judgment call. Responsibility implies that there's something that we can do about it, that we can learn from it, that even though we weren't truly free or we made a mistake, maybe we weren't at fault on a, deterministic level, but we can still take responsibility for it. In my opinion, I think that therapy is about the past, the present, and the future. In the present, we can process how we think and feel and start to uncover more of the story about who we are, and we can choose to live by our values and to learn from our mistakes or to learn about our relationship to the past and have our values be the compass that directs us towards a better future. We can have both a deterministic relationship with reality and also use our values to dictate how to move forward. We can, despite not having any free will, we can feel better, we can heal our relationships, we can have a more realistic relationship with ourselves, and using our values, we can lead a life that's worth living.